In the golden age of American television, there existed an invisible throne more powerful than any studio executive's office, more influential than any network boardroom. For 30 years, Johnny Carson didn't just host The Tonight Show, he controlled the very heartbeat of entertainment itself. A single appearance on his stage could transform a struggling comedian into a household name overnight. But there was another side to this power, one whispered about in green rooms and dressing rooms across Hollywood: the ability to make someone disappear completely. This is the story of those who crossed the line, the stars who learned too late that in Johnny Carson's kingdom, betrayal, arrogance, and disrespect carried a price more devastating than any scandal, permanent exile from the most important stage in America. The most painful chapter in Johnny Carson's reign began with love and ended in ice-cold silence. Joan Rivers wasn't just another comedian who passed through The Tonight Show. She was family. When she first stepped onto that stage in 1965, she was nobody, a struggling comic whose career hung by a thread. Johnny saw something special in her, wiped tears of laughter from his eyes, and told America she was going to be a star. He didn't just predict her success, he built it with his own hands. Over 2 decades, Joan became the only person Johnny trusted enough to sit in his chair when he took vacations. She was his chosen successor, his spiritual daughter in the world of late-night television. But in 1986, fear poisoned everything. Terrified that NBC would replace her with younger talent, Joan made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She negotiated a deal with Fox to host her own competing show, and she did it all in secret. The man who had lifted her from obscurity, who had given her everything, learned about it from a newspaper. When Joan finally called his private number, her voice trembling with explanations and apologies, Johnny's response was brutal in its simplicity. His voice came through the line, calm and distant, like speaking to a stranger. "I heard you got your own show. Congratulations." Then silence. He hung up. No argument, no second chances, no farewell. For the next 19 years, until the day he died, Johnny Carson never spoke to Joan Rivers again. Her name was forbidden on The Tonight Show. Her old clips were locked away, even when her Fox show collapsed, even when her husband committed suicide. Under the weight of their failures, Johnny's silence remained absolute. Joan had learned the hardest lesson of all with Johnny Carson. You could make mistakes, you could stumble, you could even fail, but betrayal meant you ceased to exist. While Joan Rivers was erased through silence, Wayne Newton was banned through something far more dramatic: direct confrontation. Known as Mr. Las Vegas, Newton was everything Carson found ridiculous, flamboyant, overdressed, groomed to perfection with his signature mustache and theatrical presence. Through the early 80s, Johnny made Wayne the butt of countless jokes, constantly mocking his masculinity and suggesting he was effeminate. Night after night, America laughed while Wayne Newton's blood boiled. He tried the diplomatic route, contacting producers, asking politely for the jokes to stop. But Johnny was king. And kings don't take orders from their subjects. The mockery only intensified. Then one afternoon, Wayne Newton decided he'd had enough. He didn't hire lawyers or issue statements. Instead, he drove straight to NBC's Burbank studios, walked past security using his fame as a pass, and stormed directly into Johnny Carson's private dressing room. What happened next became legend. According to Wayne's own account, he grabbed Johnny by the lapels, shoved him back into his chair, and delivered a promise that was anything but showbiz Polish: keep making jokes about me, and I won't sue you. I'll find you and beat you senseless in front of everyone. Johnny Carson, who had faced countless guests and handled every kind of personality, had never encountered this. He looked into Wayne's eyes and saw something undeniable. This man wasn't bluffing. Johnny nodded. Wayne released him, straightened his jacket, and walked out as coldly as he'd entered. The joke stopped immediately. Johnny never mentioned Wayne Newton's name again. But Carson had his own form of revenge. The doors of The Tonight Show slammed shut forever. Wayne had won the battle, but lost access to America's most powerful platform. Not all of Carson's enemies fought their way onto the blacklist through betrayal or violence. Some earned their place through sheer obnoxiousness. Chevy Chase was Hollywood's golden boy in the mid-70s, the breakout star of Saturday Night Live, with movie-style looks and rebellious charm. Johnny initially saw potential in him, a possible successor to carry comedy into the next generation. But that promise died quickly when Johnny discovered what lay beneath the handsome exterior an ego so massive it crushed everyone around it. Chevy treated NBC's backstage staff like servants, yelling at makeup artists and mocking assistants. For Johnny, who treated every crew member with respect, this was unforgivable. But Chevy's arrogance didn't stop backstage. When he sat across from Johnny on camera, he behaved like he was doing the show a favor. He put his feet up, leaned back with smug superiority, gave curt answers designed to show he was smarter than the host, and deliberately disrupted Johnny's rhythm. While legends like Bob Hope and Frank Sinatra showed deference to Carson's throne, Chevy Chase acted like his presence was a gift. Johnny didn't need dramatic confrontations with people like Chevy. He simply whispered to his producer that he didn't want to see him anymore, and the door closed quietly, but permanently. While contemporaries like Steve Martin and Robin Williams became Tonight Show regulars and saw their careers soar, Chevy Chase found himself pushed to the margins. No official ban was needed. Johnny's silence sent a message throughout Hollywood: this man has a character problem. Talent means nothing if you're unbearable to be around. Johnny's blacklist wasn't reserved only for entertainers. In 1968, he made the mistake of inviting Jim Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney, who claimed to have explosive evidence about JFK's assassination. Johnny gave him an unusually long segment, genuinely hoping to bring important truths to light. Instead, he got a masterclass in conspiracy theory nonsense. When pressed for actual evidence, Garrison produced nothing but blurry photos, vague hypotheses, and baseless accusations. He dodged every direct question Johnny asked, rambling through roundabout answers that went nowhere. Johnny's eyes narrowed as he realized the truth. This man was using America's biggest media platform to sell books and polish his own reputation, not to seek justice. What infuriated Johnny most was Garrison's contempt for his audience's intelligence, the assumption that dramatic accusations and loud voices could manipulate millions of viewers. Johnny switched from interviewer to prosecutor right on air, interrupting and dismantling Garrison's loose arguments until the man was sweating and fumbling. The moment the camera stopped, Johnny told his producers to never allow that charlatan back. Profiting from a president's death was beyond forgiveness. Among all the guests Johnny Carson hated, Uri Geller held a special place because he violated something deeply personal: the art of magic. Before becoming television royalty, Johnny had been a young magician called the Great Carson. He loved real illusions but despised frauds who used cheap tricks and claimed supernatural powers. When Uri Geller appeared in 1973, claiming telepathic abilities that could bend spoons and restart broken watches, the whole world believed him. Johnny didn't. Before the taping, he secretly consulted James Randi, the legendary debunker of psychic frauds, who gave him simple advice: prepare your own props and don't let Geller or his team touch anything beforehand. When the cameras rolled, Geller walked out confident and flashy, but his face changed when he saw the table of brand new, unaltered spoons and sealed envelopes. Without his prepared materials, Geller's powers evaporated. He rubbed spoons that wouldn't bend, guessed at drawings he couldn't see, and made excuses as sweat poured down his face. Johnny's cruelty was in his patience. He sat back calmly, let the silence stretch, and allowed the camera to capture every moment of Geller's desperate failure. For 22 agonizing minutes, America watched the illusion crumble. Geller left humiliated, exposed as the fraud Johnny always knew he was. The tragedy of Bob Hope's relationship with Johnny Carson reveals the limits even of Carson's power. To audiences watching in the 70s and 80s, they seemed like comedy soulmates, laughing and bantering like old friends. The truth was far different. Bob Hope sat at the very top of Johnny's list of people he never wanted to see, but Hope was too powerful, too connected, and too much of an NBC cash cow to refuse. Every time Hope appeared, he brought a thick script written by his team of writers. He didn't come to have a conversation, he came to deliver pre-programmed punchlines. Johnny would ask about Hope's health, and Bob would ignore the question entirely, launching into a memorized joke about golf or politics. He didn't listen, didn't respond, didn't connect. He just waited for Johnny to stop talking so he could fire out his next scripted line like a comedy machine. For Johnny, a master of improvisation who thrived on genuine interaction, interviewing Bob Hope was torture. He wasn't a host. He was a prop for Hope's promotional tour. The studio audience laughed at Hope's polished jokes, never seeing the pain behind Johnny's smile. Longtime stay knew the truth. Johnny's smile for Bob Hope was his fakest. He smiled from obligation, from network pressure, but inside he was screaming with boredom. The tragedy was that Hope would invite himself directly through NBC executives, and Johnny had to yield. Every time Hope left, Johnny would loosen his tie, exhale sharply, and shake his head in exhaustion. Bob Hope was the only guest Johnny couldn't kick out, but also the only one who never touched his heart. These 9 names tell a single story about power, respect, and the unwritten laws of show business. Johnny Carson's throne wasn't just a seat on a stage, it was a mirror that reflected everyone's true character. Talent could get you through the door, but only kindness, humility, and respect kept you in that chair. Those who forgot this learned that in Carson's kingdom, exile was forever.